I'm Adam. I started at KeepSafe about 6 months ago, and I had never programmed for Android before. And one of basically my first major project was updating the UI of our Android app to the Google's design guidelines that they established with Android 4. Because previous to that, we had been working with a lot of Android 2 users, and design was not the best. Oh yeah, this is the title of my talk. It's called Bringing Your App into the Future. Anyway, on the left you have our old design, and on the right you see the new design. As you can see on the left, we have this kind of like hand-rolled title bar with weird icons that you're not really sure what they do. Hand-rolled buttons at the bottom. I don't even know why this blue line is there. All that's replaced with the action bar and the split action icons at the bottom. We had this old sliding menu with this terrible texture, which just will tell you how terrible it is. And which was a third-party library, and very iOS-y, as it kind of like slides the whole content over when it slides out. And now it's the Android navigation drawer that you see in all of Google's apps and all the other cool big company apps. Looks really nice. Here's our gallery. You can see that like content didn't really fill up the whole screen. Had these buttons at the bottom again in the title bar. Had this overflow looking icon in the top right, which looks like it will drop down a menu, but actually it started selecting things. Pretty weird. Alright, so the first challenge that we had to face was when we update this UI, we can't just drop all our Android 2 users. Like, that was probably at least 15 to 20% of our user base still. There's no way that we can just drop support for Android 2 because of a UI thing. So we had to look at compatibility libraries so that we could have backward compatibility to Android 2 with our new UI. And it turned out that there were basically two options. There was Action Bar Sherlock, which is a third-party library made by a guy from Square, I think you said it was, yep. That did Action Bar on old Android devices. And then Google's more recently released official support library, AppCompat, which would support the action bar and related things all the way back to version 7 of the Android API, which we were on 9, so that was good enough for us. So we looked at the various pros and cons of each. For AppCompat, obviously it's an official Google library, and it will continue to get support from them. So that was definitely a plus. In addition, it had a more clearly delineated API in the sense that instead of getActionBar, which was a method of an activity in the official API on high enough versions, you would call getSupportActionBar, which was clearly the support version, where on Action Bar Sherlock, you would call getActionBar still, and the only difference would be your import statement. So it was more clear when you were using compatibility versions versus native versions. In addition, AppCompat has built-in lint support to notify you when you're using native versions when you shouldn't be. So that's helpful. And Obviously, this is wishful thinking, but maybe they'll even add support for the new Android L material design. Maybe not. But wishful thinking. In favor of Action Bar Sherlock, it did support preference activities, which AppCompat doesn't. Unfortunately, this wasn't really helpful for us because we actually needed to use preference fragments, which were supported by neither. Also, you may not be able to read it in the picture, but that's the latest release of Action Bar Sherlock, which occurred on July 29th, 2013. So I don't think it's getting any more updates. So we picked AppCompat, sorry. Should not have scrolled. Anyway, so we chose AppCompat and we went with that. And that has worked out pretty well for us. There have been a couple of weird things that we had to fix, but nothing terrible. Next section is called Why, Samsung Why. And it is easier for me to show you than to describe to you our problems with this. So this is a short video of an old build of our app on a Nexus 5, where I go into the gallery and I select an item and I have all these options at the bottom that pop up. Cool. The options popped up. Let's look at the same thing on a Galaxy S5. What? There's nothing there. I can't do anything with this. How do I do this? Samsung, what did you do? I want to repeat, this is the exact same APK. And the Galaxy S5 is a brand new phone at the time. Like, I don't even know what they did. Also, we had this problem on the Galaxy S2, S3, and S4, which is a fairly large proportion of our user base when we across those devices, as you might guess, since they're fairly popular. So let's see. What do we? Right. So I went home and I thought about this, and I thought, okay, what is Samsung allowed to change about Android that could screw this up? And the answer, I thought to myself, well, they can change the default themes, but we're shipping our own AppCompat theme in our library that we're inheriting our app-specific theme from. So clearly that shouldn't be an issue, except when I went back and looked at the AppCompat source, oh, they're inheriting from the default theme. This is a problem. And it turned out in the themes for the action mode, which is the selection mode that you go into, Samsung had done something with the default theme that made it not work when you split the action bar to the bottom. So the solution was, there we go. Don't trust them. On devices where the Holo theme, which AppCompat emulates, were available, we just chose to extend our action mode theme from Holo rather than AppCompat. And the reason to do that was that Samsung and all of the manufacturers are required to ship Holo untouched. So you can trust Holo, you can't trust theme default. And generally, you just don't trust them. They'll do weird shit to you. Finally, we have let's look at some stuff about how to customize your UI in ways that aren't necessarily given to you by the official or support libraries. So I want to look at, this is our album list. And I want to look at this, we have this overflow icon on each album. And you click on it, it pops up a menu. So you can do stuff with the albums. It looks fairly like what you would expect, but actually it's not quite so easy to make it look like that. So let's look at how we build this. In the Sport library, there's a pop-up menu. So when we click on our overflow icon, let's just make a little pop-up menu. Give it a method so that it can handle item selections and inflate it with our own menu. We show that, and let's see what we get with that. Well, that's not really quite what we wanted. We don't have any icons. It's not really where we wanted it to be. And all the other albums didn't fade out like we want to do. So what can we do about that? Well, I don't see anything in the public pop-up menu API that would let me show those icons. But I think that they're probably still there because I was able to define them in the menu resource. So let's take a look at the pop-up menu code. And I see something interesting. We have a menu pop-up helper, which is private and is an instance of an internal class. Let's look at that menu pop-up helper in a little bit more detail. Oh, it has this method. It's called setForceShowIcon. That sounds like exactly what I want to do. So what we can do, unfortunately this method is private, or the member is private that I need to call the method on. And additionally, the object is of a type that I can't get at because it's an internal implementation. So you have to go to Java reflection APIs. So we're going to just examine our objects at runtime, and let's see, we grab the field from the menu called mPopup as shown in the source, and we set it accessible, and then we find its method called setForceShowIcon, and we force invoke it. Let's see what happens when we do that. Oh hey, I have icons. Nice. Unfortunately, my menu is still not really where I wanted it to be, and my other items aren't faded out yet. But let's see what we can do about that. Let's go back up to the menu pop-up helper. Oh, I see it has this other member called that's called mPopup, which looks suspiciously important, which is a list pop-up window. Now, from what I know about Android, windows are the things that get overlaid over other things. So let's look at what a list pop-up window is. Turns out it has these convenient methods called getWidth and setHorizontalOffset. So, reflection again. Let's go. It turns out that when you want to set this offset, that offset is calculated from where the framework wants to place the window. Unfortunately, in our case, where it wants to place the window is left aligned with our view that we're anchoring to, which is our overflow icon. Let's go back a little bit. This 3-dot icon. Unfortunately, if I left aligned with that icon, I go off the screen, so it just moves it all to the left, that amount. So, understanding that where my anchor point is actually here, That's the wrong way. I just call set horizontal offset and move it left the entire width of the window. And let's see where that gets us. Oh, hey, it moved left. And now it's the right corner is anchored on that corner. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Now we just have to do this fading out thing that we wanted, which will help us more easily visually identify which album has been selected. So luckily this isn't too hard. You just have to just write it yourself. I have references to all of our own albums, so we just go through our list and find them all and run this animation that fades out their alpha until they look faded out. And then of course we have to set a dismiss listener so that we can undo that when we dismiss the menu. And let's see what that looks like in motion. We slowed this down a little bit. It's not that slow. All right. So what you take away from that is, if it's not given to you, you can write it yourself. And of course, always read the source code. It's very helpful. Android is open source, and it's a great tool that you can use to help you not only develop new features, but also solve really weird bugs that you may encounter. And that's all I have. Questions?